You're listening to the Vacation Rental Key with T&T, the podcast for vacation rental managers by vacation rental managers. I'm Tim Cafferty, and I manage two companies, one in Virginia and one in North Carolina. And I'm one of the two T's.
And I'm the other T, Tiffany Edwards, born and raised in the vacation rental business. I help manage our family businesses from Key West all the way to Kauai.
In the next 30 minutes, we're going to give you our keys to success in the vacation rental business. Welcome back, everyone, to the Vacation Rental Key with T&T. I'm Tim.
I'm Tiffany.
And today we venture into a new course. You may be able to see us if you're on YouTube today. And I've broken out my hat from Wheelhouse. It says this ain't no hobby. And it isn't. Those professionals out there know that we try to give you nuggets every time we get with you every other Monday. And today we really have some nuggets coming your way. As the last episode, we talked about predictions for 2026, very AI related, and we have an AI expert amongst us, Tiffany.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We got to hear a lot more from David at DARM. We've mentioned it in our last couple episodes, the data and revenue management. But David, after you won the battleground, Tim and I looked at each other and we said we have to have David on to have some of these conversations as the buzz continues to build around AI, but also because many of us don't really understand AI. So we brought you here to help teach us a lot more.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for having me, Tim, Tiffany. This is really going to be a fun discussion. Nobody is born knowing this stuff. So I'm here to educate and help out the best I can.
So how did you get involved with our industry and the vacation rentals? Because you have a background, data analysis. So can you share with our listeners some of your background and then how you got involved with Track and the hospitality industry?
Yeah. So I started with Track just about 3 years ago, and they brought me on in order to be the lead data scientist for the entire company. So the majority of what I do today, and even for the last 3 years, is to build machine learning and artificial intelligence into our product in order to solve actual operational pain. When I started about 3 years ago, I was working on the algorithm for the Track revenue or for the rented product. So basically making predictions into the future about for dynamic pricing. And from there, I was also taking other projects on as well. So doing the pricing as well as, again, like I said, is to really take AI and put it into our product. So artificial intelligence has been around for quite some time. It's just getting a lot of hype now. Of course, I hope to talk about that hype in this episode.
And you are known as the lead data scientist at TravelNet, which of course is home of the Track property management software. We're really curious, Tiffany and I collectively, about what a day in the life of a data analyst looks like. What do you do every day?
Most of the time, like I mentioned, I'm trying to take machine learning and artificial intelligence and wire it into our product. So that could be something like support ticket intelligence or customer review sentiment analysis. So not just positive or negative, but also grouping out different parts of a review. And also pretty much doing agentic style automation to help property managers like operate faster without having to need like a degree in data science. I think the goal of what I am doing or what I'm doing every single day is really to solve operational pain. When we speak to our customers, what are their biggest pain points? What is causing them hours or days worth of work throughout a month? And then how do we make that so that their job gets a lot smoother? We also want them to be able to trust the AI solutions that we put in place. So a lot of what I'm doing is really, majority of my week is really just digging into artificial intelligence, understanding where the hype is, what to ignore, where to put the focus, and then apply that so that our property managers or our customers are actually succeeding in their role.
I need to unpack a lot of that, but probably will need a few minutes to do that. But, David, one of the things that's so interesting is that, you mentioned that there's so much hype now around AI. And I don't think that vacation rentals are unique in an industry where there's fear associated with AI. One, because of potential loss of jobs or, that it would outpace human work. But you have really described it in a concept of replacing a night shift model. And I want you to kind of touch on what you're doing to that night shift and what a night shift is, and that AI should really, and I believe this is the quote, that replaces work that humans should have never had to do in the first place. So will you talk a little bit more about what those goals are?
Definitely. Yeah, so what you're referencing is what I was speaking about at Darm, where basically a property manager doesn't work a day shift, they work three. So the first is the daytime operations. That's when their guests are checking in, or their cleaners are rescheduling, or the owners are demanding a report. That's during the day. And the nighttime is kind of like the scramble to make sure like there's a sanity check on the pricing and availability, just to make sure all the listings are aligned across the OTAs. And then there's that third shift. That's the invisible one that happens when everybody else has gone to bed or while they're still in bed. So most of the time, whenever a property manager or an owner is working on, let's just say, updating a property description or fighting a chargeback or even tagging images or even responding to any of their customer reviews. Those are the kind of things that you can't necessarily do during the day. And then at night, you're just trying to make sure that your revenue is covered and your availability is there. But that work that I'm mentioning that's the stuff that protects a property manager's reputation. It is also the work that will burn people out very slowly. So what I want to do with that quote is to basically say that when we think about it, there's a lot of work that humans have to do, a lot of repetition, a lot of copy paste, and then adjust. When we're talking about the products that Track is putting out, we are trying to, like I mentioned earlier, solve real operational pain that is causing property managers to spend hours throughout the week or days throughout the month just doing this one repetitive remedial task. So that's the goal, is to make sure, because a lot of people will ask the wrong question. Is AI coming for my job? Am I going to be replaced by AI in a year? No. Somebody using it will replace you, but no, you won't be replaced. However, the better question is just like what you said. What if AI replaced all the work that humans should have never had to do in the first place? Because we are in hospitality. We are focused on humans, where it has to be a human-to-human connection. It's not like if we were to work in healthcare, somebody has to go to the hospital because they have an ailment or because they broke their arm or because they need surgery. People choose to go on vacation. This is how they're spending their money. So we have to be able to treat them with the utmost, the peak luxury that they deserve.
Good stuff. Got so many questions. I think I want to go to how property managers may be using AI now, or maybe think they should be using it, but it's a mistake. Where do you see people going down that rabbit hole that they shouldn't because maybe there's already something in place?
Yeah. Well, like we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of hype around things. So there are some points where I don't think property managers really need to focus. And there's actually two. The first is chasing the newest model or the newest framework every single month. I mean, let's face it, AI moves fast, like really fast. It seems like every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, there's a new model that came out and it's topping the charts and it's beating the competitors. So how do we keep up? Do we stick with the one we've always used, or do we move to a different one? I think that leads to way too much confusion. So property managers don't necessarily need to follow the hype or the latest framework. The second problem I think that some property managers might be doing wrong is focusing on AI agents before they've actually fixed any data quality or workflow issues internally. So a lot of people are talking about agents. It was around this time last year that Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, said AI 2025 is going to be the year where AI agents enter the workforce. But we also have to remember that there's incentive bias there. So if Sam Altman and the shareholders agree that he's allowed to say something like that, the stock price goes up. There's a lot of talk about what's going to happen in 2026. People will be talking about model context protocol and then Google's agent-to-agent structure. Whenever we talk about these things, is that something else that we need to learn? I think that's something that data scientists and AI engineers need to learn. But property managers need to partner with a trusted source that will basically take care of this, but they still need to be smart enough so that they're not just buying the hype.
I could follow up on that as well. That's what people like you do. So people like myself as a property manager, we probably need to go to our trusted partners, as you say, and see what tools are already there and how that could help us, don't you think?
Correct. Yeah. Sometimes what you could be focusing on could already be in your PMS. I love using this example because about 15, 20 years ago, people were really focused on dashboards. Remember this? Dashboards were the latest craze. Everybody was talking about dashboards. There were companies devoted to just making dashboards. And then even companies like Salesforce created a dashboard within your CRM. So everything became dashboards. It was so focused and it was very good. But at the same time, with dashboards, there was like you could click between different dashboards and you could see all the different dashboards. Very helpful. You could see this, the high level CEO, you could go all the way down to the product manager. However, all of that data was already there. And those dashboards were already kind of being created in Excel. So people would take them offline. Now everything's in the software. The thing about the dashboards is that there was another little tables tab. So you could click on that tab. So if you could actually see the data behind what the dashboard was showing. So if anything looked off, you could see that data. Now fast forward to what we're seeing with AI agents. With AI agents, this is a very powerful tool to query and to search your data. However, if an AI agent doesn't have access to a tool to create that tabular format or to create a chart, it can't do it. So instead of buying something new and thinking that this is going to be the thing that solves your problem, see what you currently have. And is it actually going to save you time? These are questions I think everybody should be walking away with when they're listening to this podcast, is so that they understand, is this really going to be saving me time? How much time am I going to be saving?
And to your point, too, it's not just the property managers. I think that we've made this comment before, probably offline, but that everyone throws up a sticker that says AI, right? So you've got a lot of suppliers that are out there, and there is a race, say, to put out as much dashboard. But where do you stand from a trusted source of how you prioritize what that you're sending out to your customer base? So is it through client feedback? Is it adapting to OTA changes? Or is it going live? Because once it goes live, you have to have it work or you've lost that trust. Like, where do you guys prioritize, or what should we be looking at with our suppliers to make sure that we're getting what we need?
Yeah, that's a great point. Because if an AI agent is mostly right, it's still wrong, right? It has to be right every time, no question, especially when it's customer focused. So at Track, what we do internally is we test things internally, not just with quality assurance, but we actually test the project internally. I'll give you an example. So chatbots, asking an AI agent questions about about your listings or about any of your data. We test that internally so we can work out the bugs before it even goes to a customer. Because the question that everybody should be asking, when the AI is wrong, who is accountable for that? That's a hard question to answer. But we've seen so many different people just buying into this idea about this is the hype, this is the future. It's right 100% of the time. But to be honest, we have to be very wary of that. So I don't want to give the idea that I'm like anti-agent or anti-AI. No. Agents aren't the point. Reliability is. We need to have somebody trust the numbers. So at Track, we're testing that internally. What we're focused on, instead of being anti-agent, we're pro-outcome. So whether it's machine learning or artificial intelligence or even just, I don't know, some mathematical function or algorithm, whatever the tool is, that's what we'll use. And as long as it delivers the right answer, then that's the best tool for the job.
So it sounds like going live, number one, continuing to have feedback to better have an outcome for that specific product is something we should continue to look at through our supplier lens.
Right. Yeah. So what's important is that we test this internally, not just with quality assurance. Like, we just have to make sure there is a software development lifecycle that we follow to make sure that even before it goes live, it's gone through rigorous tests. So we're not even just talking about artificial intelligence, but even any kind of features that you'll see in Track. We test this internally, and then once it goes live, we are regularly checking to see if there are any errors. Because, it's not common, but there are some times when an error will be caught by a customer. And when that happens, we refocus our efforts to make sure that that is fixed, because you have to make sure that when it goes into production, when it's published, when it's customer facing, that it is right every single time.
And I can tell you, when you ask the question, who's at blame for that? Tim, it's you and I, right? It's anyone who answers the phone on our side, because we have had things go wrong, and it's my frontline, people. It's me at the end of the day having to answer to that. So I
Uh,
appreciate the testing there because I do think there's a lot of companies out there. I'm not asking, please don't name any, but there are a lot of them out there that don't provide that testing.
Tiffany, as you know, I had the opportunity to speak with David in a mini fireside chat along with CJ Stam. And as he was talking there, I remembered what you said at that brief meeting we had: the retriever, the writer, and the critic. So I think those guys are well at work behind the scenes. But I want to get into something else you said in that brief time we had together. And don't want to put words in your mouth, but you talked about a group called LEAP, LEAP, 300 AI researchers, and by 2030, they predict that 18% of human work will be done by artificial intelligence. But the
Yes.
real staggering thing was by 2040, it's just 15 years, it rated an 8 out of a 10 on a technical scale. Give us an idea of what that means.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that you brought that up because this is a group of experts. It's actually 339 researchers that are across multiple industries, multiple sectors. So we're not just dealing with, the AI researchers at OpenAI or Anthropic or any of the top AI companies. These are AI researchers that have papers that they've written. They've been cited a certain number of times. They're also professors at top universities like MIT and Stanford. They're also leading economists. They're computer scientists. They're AI economists. They work in Washington think tanks for economic terms or economic reasons. So they're really spread across multiple industries. Now, LEAP, so the Longitudinal Expert AI Panel. LEAP. So this is made up of many different people who they really have kind of weighted the answers so that the top AI companies really who have skin in the game, these are the ones you can't really push that idea that AI is going to be artificial general intelligence is going to be regular in 2026. If you asked any of the AI researchers at Cohere or OpenAI or Anthropic, they'll be telling you that. But LEAP is an organization that I trust because they do something that's called these short-term forecasts. Typically, a forecast will come out once a year. This is what we predict starting for 2026. However, what LEAP does is they work on these short-term forecasts and they put out monthly forecasts. So basically, as the AI is changing, new models are coming out every 4 weeks, then basically they'll be able to look at any kind of minor changes and adjust where they think is going to happen. One of their predictions just recently this year came out that 2030, 18%, you're correct, very good memory, 18% of Americans' work will be handled by AI, which is dwarfed by the 2 to 4% that it currently is in 2025. So think about the amount of work that will be handled by 2030. And in 15 years, by 2040, there will be they use like a technological Richter scale. So on a scale of up to 10, artificial intelligence will be an 8 out of 10. Okay, what does that mean? 8 out of 10. What else is 8 out of 10? The automobile has been 8 out of 10 in the past. This created brand new industries. Think about it. It created the travel industry. People were able to, it also created the robotic arms in order to, put the door on the side of the car to paint the car. So this really, really exploded. Even governments needed to keep up in order to start making highways. The second technology is electricity. So think about everything that electricity has done, the backbone of the modern day. That is what they're predicting by 2040.
So I throw that out there for those of you that are saying this is a fad, but I want to transition right into something else. And that's, we hear that AI can now handle 60% of routine guest inquiries unedited. So where's the line where a human has to step in and make sure we have that authentic hospitality?
I think everybody on this who's watching this podcast or listening to this podcast could probably agree that even before artificial intelligence, when chatbots were showing up on every single website, to ask them about questions, they would even still have difficulty because the chatbot would get caught in a loop. I asked you about this one reservation. Here's my reservation number, and now I'm starting to get upset. So once a customer starts to get upset, and artificial intelligence is very good at picking out these kind of patterns, that's when I think it needs to be rerouted to a human. When it finds that it's being caught in a loop, that's when I think it needs to be rerouted to a human. We're able to track these metrics. If we can track it, then it's important. We're able to track how many times artificial intelligence may hallucinate. No, not even just hallucinations, just off on a tangent somewhere, but we can actually analyze from a mathematical standpoint the answer and the question. How close are they linked? So I think if there's anything there where the question from a customer, whether it's through a chatbot or whether it's through an AI agent on the telephone, or even through a message, like a text message that's coming through or an email. I think humans always need to be kept in the loop. There are certain times when we can take our hands off and we don't necessarily need to be involved at every step of the process. But especially while things are new and while people are adopting this, keeping a human in the loop is essential, especially where trust is on the line.
But if we look at from the data points of 2030 and the 18% increase and, expecting that to also continue to increase and the 8 out of 10 value, at what point does the human interaction become less in that hospitality? And I ask generally because I still believe that there's a lot of human interaction, but I also liken this to keyless entry. I used to sit at the front desk and welcome everyone, and we thought that was great until we moved to keyless, and no one wanted to come to the front desk anymore because it's another bother, right? It's a friction point. And then we had to have people up there. And so there's continued pull away from these, human interaction points. But what does that look like when that circle is no longer rebooting? When we get to 2040 or 2050?
Yeah, well, it's important, I think, for people to start understanding this now. So before I even answer that, to see what does it look like in the future, what should people be doing now, right? Because people will hear some of these statistics and some people might get afraid. And, what does that mean? And am I going to be replaced? I think what's important is that we start upskilling now. We understand what it is. You don't need a degree in data science in order to understand, and you don't need to spend hours and hours every week just pining over data or even understanding just what the AI bot can or cannot do. I think once we start to understand more, then we'll have more of a level head about it. That knowledge will kind of put our minds at ease. But what does that look like in the future? The truth? That's a good question. But I think customers will be able to be met where they want to be met. You mentioned the keyless entry. That was something that for some people, they don't want to deal with anybody. They just want to be able to walk in, put their stuff down, unpack, and go to dinner. Or maybe people do want that person-to-person, communication, that human touch. And that's okay. It gives them the option that they'll be able to choose themselves. For me personally, sometimes I don't want to be in touch with anybody except for, if something is going wrong. Well, there's not so many towels, I need to speak with the person. Or, maybe there's a leak in the bathroom, I need to speak with a human. But if I want to find out recommendations for the best restaurant, I'll just Google it. I don't necessarily need to speak to somebody, but somebody else may want something else. So I think while it's still going to be there, I don't think human interaction is going to go away completely. I think actually the most important thing will be human interaction, to really have that deep relationship so that people can keep purchasing direct. And we're going to get into hopefully we can talk about the channel, when we're talking about direct sales versus the OTAs. I think what will actually make more direct sales is when people have a better interaction, they have a better experience because they're going on vacation for the experience. I mentioned earlier that they'll go on vacation. This is their choice to go on vacations instead of people going on vacation just to get away. Every year we just need to go on a vacation. People are now going on vacations, since COVID at least, for this experience. They really want to enjoy their times rather than just maybe going on vacation because we did so every year. And even in the last podcast, I remember we were talking about, or Nir Maimon, he was mentioning, he works in these the luxury rentals. And
Ultra
these
luxury.
these ultra luxury experiences is where people are putting their money. So I think that's what we need to listen to is where are people putting their money? Where are people putting their time? Because time also is money. And that's important for us as property managers as software developers to understand where people are putting their money. People will say one thing, but then they'll pay for something else.
So speaking of the last episode, there was a lot of talk about AI search. What's your position on AI search versus Google search, if you will? And what do we as rental managers need to do to position ourselves for 26 and beyond, Dave?
Yeah, great. So AI search, just for everybody for context, there are a couple different terms that are floating around the internet. You've probably heard AEO, which is answer engine optimization, And then there's GEO, which is generative engine optimization. And then there's even, I've heard AIO as well. So since this is still new, these are probably all about the same thing, but basically what it is it's instead of going through a Google search, you would go into your favorite AI tool and you would ask for information. A lot of people are kind of tired of seeing the same 10 sponsored links when they go to a Google search. So instead, now they're using AI searches. But let's look at the data. Recent data shows that this year, 2025, there was a split of 95%, 5%. For Google searches, 95%, and then only 5% are AI searches. So it doesn't mean it's obsolete, but that number is growing. Actually, forecasts and predictions in the future expect that by 2030, that will tip in favor of AI search. So that means that more than 50% of all searches on the internet will be done by AI. So why is this important? Why is it important now? It's important because property managers have to know what their data needs to look like and how it's represented on the back end. So good quality, clean data is essential for an AI agent to search. So instead of actually looking at all the images, the search will actually look at, whether or not your data is aligned. That's why I think structured data is so important this upcoming year. It's getting it in place and getting it right and getting it clean. So it's the same across your direct channel, Airbnb and Vrbo, and wherever else you are.
Who becomes the ultimate winner in that when that tips over? Is it long-standing historic property managers that have a lot of content on their website? Is it the OTAs and hosts because they can invest more into those programs? So where does it topple, and who becomes the winner and who becomes the loser in that model?
Great question. The winners and the losers, I think, will still be yet to be defined because, first of all, we don't know if AI tools are going to include any kind of sponsored links. And for instance, Google at one time was just a straight Google search. It was developed by Larry Page, and he developed the algorithm, the PageRank. So that was so important back then, but now it's more sponsored links. So some people will just kind of scroll down that. I think what's important is to know how to use that search engine. Now, I can't take credit for this quote. I remember Zach Cass said at the DARM Expo, the people who will win will be Tiffany, you know where I'm going with this. Win will be the people who know how to search with it. It's the same thing with Google. If you don't want to see any sponsored links, you scroll past those sponsored and then you get what you really want to see. I think it's going to be the same thing with the AI searches. I think people are going to be wanting more of a direct answer, but it's only a matter of time until something changes. So I think what's important here for property managers is to get your listing ready. Make sure your data is clean on the back end. Make sure that, give it a try. Go into one of your AI tools and, do a search. Actually, at Track, we have built a framework offline internally so that we can search for our customers. We can actually enter into a text search and we'll send it off to 3 different agents using 3 different queries. We use OpenAI, we use Anthropic, and we use another one as well called DuckDuckGo. But this is basically doing some sort of search on the back end, pulling that data in, and then analyzing where that account is located. Are they in the top 5, top 10? Maybe they're not even in the top 50. That's an important way for us to very quickly know, okay, what is missing? What needs to be added? What needs to change? So I recommend a lot of the property managers try this out themselves to see where they actually.
As we're wrapping this up here, you alluded to it before, so I want to give you the opportunity for property managers to maybe get increased direct traffic versus OTA reliance through these tools.
Yeah, I think direct bookings, one of my predictions for the future is that direct bookings will keep growing for the property managers who invest in trust and that experience. So when we're talking about the artificial or the AI searches, we still see Airbnb and Vrbo at the top of the list. And that's just because they have a very clean back end on their data. So on the back end, the things that humans do not read, they have a very clean back end. However, that doesn't mean that direct bookings are going to be going away. Of course, it depends on each individual market and each individual customer. When we're talking about direct bookings, if a customer or a property manager refuses to see their investment in the OTAs as an investment, if they only see it as sunk costs, well then yes, it is a wasted investment. However, getting somebody in the door the first time through Airbnb is not a bad thing, but then it's up to the property manager to make that experience so good and to give incentive so that they come back direct the next time and every time after that. And I remember being on a panel and I said this, and this resonated with a lot of property managers in the room, because what's important is, yes, we don't like paying a certain percentage of our revenue out to the OTAs. I understand that. Everybody wants to keep that so that then we can invest in our business. We can do more with our companies. However, I think it's important to know that we can then use this and think of this as an investment instead of just sunk costs.
That makes me feel a lot more positive, because I think I've had a lot of conversations of, is direct bookings going away? So that answer is a lot more positive, and I think that it solidifies what, if you're doing it right on the experience and the touch points with your guests, whether you get them from an OTA, from a marketing perspective, and look at it that way. If you spend that time, nurture that, have the team in place, and utilize those AI tools to its best capability so that you're not creating burnout and you're getting rid of that night shift, then you'll end up being the real winners at the end. So I appreciate that answer. Tim, are we ready for rapid fire?
I have been preparing for this for some time. And so I hope David is on his toes here as we play our inane little game we like to play with our guests, where we ask you a series of off-the-wall questions to find out more about you, and you can answer in a few words or more wordy if you like. So start the clock. So David, you are a Penn State grad. So as you contemplate this football season, you would say the football season at Penn State was?
I haven't watched Penn State football in years.
Way to
Probably
go, Tim.
just as well this year.
Okay. Yeah, I used to watch when I was in college. I loved it for about 5 years afterwards, and then I moved abroad and I lost touch.
All right, well, then I have an easy one for you, because being a former resident of Naples, where is your favorite go-to restaurant there?
Doreen's Cup of Joe down on Marco Island. We love
Okay.
Doreen's. Yep.
Okay, how about email checking? Are you a few times a day guy, or are you a net zero inbox person?
I would love to say net zero, but my email is about 15 emails at this moment.
Pretty good.
One way that you currently use AI that you could never live without?
That's a great question. I would have to say coding agents. Coding agents, I've used coding agents whenever I'm writing code. I also use them to do my research. So I've built a couple, and I have some in separate projects. I do some research that the AI agents just out of the box just don't do such a good job. But coding agents, definitely.
Here's the difference between you and me. Mine's to look up menus and recipes for what I have of leftovers in my kitchens.
He stayed in character on that answer.
The data scientist has spoken.
Okay. So I almost hate to answer this question, but I'm going to anyway. What's your favorite book on business?
I just finished one called AI Engineering by Chip Quinn. I actually have this on my bookshelf. And I'm starting another one called Graph Algorithms for Data Science. So those are very exciting.
When you're not reading, where's your favorite vacation spot?
I would have to say Mexico. Yep. My wife is Mexican. My daughter was born in Mexico. Whenever we go back to Mexico, we always love vacationing around there. There are some very beautiful places that are protected by UNESCO, which is like this World Heritage organization that protects these small little towns from being overly built out with neon signs. So it looks like you're blasted back 100 years into the past. It's beautiful.
I bombed on the Penn State question. I may do it here as well. But if you are scanning channels on the TV, what's the show or that movie that you've seen 15 times, but you're going to stop and watch it anyway?
I love TV shows about sharks. So I'm always watching When Sharks Attack. And then I go for a swim in the ocean. Go figure.
Yeah, helpful living in Florida. That's great. Okay, what's one piece of advice that you would give to anyone who's looking to get into the AI industry or better themselves within what is emerging from AI?
Yeah. I would say start small. It's so tempting to swing for the fences and bring in as many important data points and AI tools as you think are necessary. However, starting small and trying to solve maybe 2 hours, 3 hours a week of time, getting that time back. If you're going to get into AI, and this is just for property managers, but if somebody is going to get into, start using AI, try to actually find a problem it will solve, measure how long it will save you, and then scale up from there.
Great advice.
Very good advice, and a good one to end on. That's David Stevens. He's the lead data scientist for TravelNet Solutions, which, if you have the video, you will see in his background is the Track software program that many of you use out there. So many thanks, David. We really appreciate the number of vacation rental keys we got today from you.
Of course, I'm happy to do it. Thank you. Thank you to you both for having me on.
We'll be back in less than 2 weeks with another episode as we enter 2026 together, emblazoned with our knowledge of AI. Thanks, Tiff. Great job as always.
Thanks, guys. See you guys again on the big screen.
So long, everybody.